All right, we are live here. Let me see how we're doing. Um, and good to talk with you. Corey, 1 second.
You're good.
My rabbits are running around and they just flipped over their bowl. So anyone that's if anyone that's just joining, you got to give me just 1 second.
I love
So
it. Rabbit
we'll give everyone
emergency.
just a second to show up.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Guys, what are you doing? All right. So if you know me, I've got a couple rabbits running around, and this is sort of their time where they love to get really active. And I forgot to hide one of their bowls, so they would just sit there and flip this bowl in the background. Um, but yeah, so I'm really excited
Oh,
to
good.
be able to talk with you today, Corey. I know there's a ton of questions that people have, and we've got some that are coming through on the chat right now. I'm going to do my best to start to like navigate everything that is Riverside. Corey and I are both Riverside noobs, is what I would say. And but technology aside, Corey, how are you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks so much for setting this up, for having me. Yeah, doing as well as I can. As always, growing with the fam and figuring out what this world of the web is and is always evolving, which is half the fun.
Yeah,
So yeah, man. Thanks again.
cool. And just a bit of background. I think you and I met on Twitter like almost 10 years ago. I was thinking about it. Like
Probably.
this was, you know, um, early no code days.
hmm
And just a bit of background around yourself. I mean, you're obviously now at Anthropic, you
hmm
were at Webflow. How did you come up?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I went to school, or I found graphic design way back in high school, was like
Oh,
the origin point, I guess. Huge
cool.
gamer back then, thought like, oh my gosh, maybe I can like learn to make video games and blah blah blah. And that didn't obviously come to fruition, but I fell in love with design first. And then out of school, oh my gosh, when you even especially when you said how'd you come up, I'm like, I'm a from I live in Iowa. I'm in Des Moines. My first job was at an industrial pump company as an intern out of college. Like nothing super fancy. I was making like data sheets and stuff. Yes,
Oh, wow.
and even back in school, I dabbled in web stuff. In college, I did some like a couple computer science classes out of curiosity. And then ever since really that point, it was like, oh, I love the web side of all this design. And then that led into a couple other roles where I just kind of kept raising my hand, like, I want to work on web stuff. And on the side, I've always dabbled in like, how do I not just design the thing, but like make the thing?
Mm,
And so I went through a phase of like a few WordPress sites and then like just vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript templates from ThemeForest way back. And then I think in like 20, maybe 17 ish, 18,
yeah.
found Webflow at the company I was at the time. It was like events and incentives company. We worked with like a lot of local, but also big companies like Home Depot and Napa Auto Parts and FCA and yeah, stuff like that. And we would do these like event sites, conference sites, that kind of stuff. And it always felt like a sticking point. And so I
Mm,
was like, can I like research what tools are out there? Found Webflow, fell in love candidly with Webflow, and then ever since just like used it like wild. I've always kind of freelanced on the side, old long time ago was just family friends, and then that evolved over the years into like working with agencies, directly with clients, all that. And then I joined Webflow on the brand team in 2020. And I mean, I took a pay cut, demotion to get in. I joined as like an entry level, not a junior brand designer. It was just like just flat brand designer, and I didn't really care. I would do anything at that point to like get in. And then was there just under 5 years. And by the time I left, I was managing the web team, and like right before I left, which was last fall, we just overhauled webflow.com, which was like in so many ways the like dream project I always wanted ever since I started, because of the evolution of Webflow itself. When I first started and up until we rebuilt everything, it was like Webflow.com was all these different projects that were proxied together,
Yep.
and it was just kind of harder and harder and harder and harder to manage. And then even just like the product itself had evolved so much to components and all these other capabilities that just didn't exist. And so overhauling it was incredible, so much fun. Also a little chaotic, but yeah, that was a highlight. And then yeah, I joined Anthropic on the web team, following a few people from Webflow that went there first. And I have to pinch myself often, because it's like I'm very very grateful to be on the team and have even just a glimpse of kind of what's all evolving a little bit from a front row seat, if you will.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, just like I've always been somebody that loves and craves learning a new thing, not necessarily, like, to be clear, random new things. I still am a very, like, I love my bread and butter, which is web and all that, but like learning new things in the space of web and design is like, just, I don't know, so fun. Trying to get back to that like flow state, if you will, that I
Yeah.
feel like is, so for me at least, so much easier to get back to when I'm in this state of like something new. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of my story.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And I remember those early days where, we were just kind of hanging out on Twitter, and there was this like time where I don't know about you, but like I didn't want to tell anybody about Webflow because it was sort of my secret sauce, you know?
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh no, like I can go in and I can do this faster than anybody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was a big debate internally, like at
Mm,
EA, like, should we talk publicly around like this thing that we're really good at?
mhm.
And fortunately we did. We decided I was like, you know what? If this is our differentiation, then that is not the moat. I was like,
Right,
the
right,
moat
right.
needs to be how we view the world, how we help, brands listen and tell great stories and all those types of things.
Mhm.
And it was funny, like the more that I started to share around like what we were doing with Webflow, then I met people like you and Bryant and Vlad and, Johnny and so
Yeah,
many people. Um, and
totes.
so it's been great to really, I mean, I'd say grow up with this community. Also wanted to give a shout out to, got some people in the comments here. So Meg, Gabby, Anya, I believe I'm saying that
The OG
correctly.
crew.
Dea, Diego, Elisa, yeah, Andrew, Pitar, Ray. So
Love it.
just,
Thanks
I
for
would
hanging,
say
Dale.
that if people have questions, throw them in here. Um, you know, as I had posted on LinkedIn, I think, part of the biggest challenge that I see in marketing today is this idea called, is it cake? Which
Mm,
if you've seen the
mhm.
show on Netflix, it's like, it looks like a cheeseburger, but it
Right.
could be cake. And I feel like like I feel like marketing is like that, because you peel back, all these AI companies are making all of these grand assertions around like they've got magic wands and you know, uh,
100%.
you know, but then you sort of peel it back and you're like, oh, it is it real?
Right.
And there was the company that was doing SOC 2 compliance, and they really weren't doing. They promised doing SOC 2 in a day, and I was like, this is not real. Then it came out and it was like, no, they're just running agents to make it look like you've got SOC 2, but you really don't.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
not. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but like there is
Yeah,
some
yeah.
really bad. Uh, uh, there are
It's
really bad kind of like offenders out there.
mhm, mhm.
And what I'm excited about today is hear from you, because you were really like you were literally on the forefront of this. Like Anthropic is running frontier models, like you are guys doing like really forward looking stuff. And so I think for people to just get a sense of like, where are the opportunities? What are the things that you're leaning in on? And,
Mhm.
how can people kind of prep for, what's next? But also focus in on like the realities. So,
Yeah, so good.
uh, yeah,
I Yeah, I think especially your example of like where not everything, don't believe everything you see,
yeah,
especially right now and especially in this space. Because I think the way I even make sense of that part is I'm like, I think people just, like anything, they love to jump on the train of hype and try to grab their little portion of it. Cause like I can't think what the company was, but there was another one that when you said that reminded me, that was like, it was supposed to be again like an AI website builder, they like kind of went a little bit viral, and then it kind of came out that like it wasn't actually AI under the hood. They were just like hiring like an army of people overseas that were like just making these things like fast and like putting blocks together or something. Like
Oh
it's
my
just like,
gosh.
what are we doing? And so I think the irony is that even the more, I've to back up a little bit, like I feel like I started using some more of these AI tools, specifically like, Claude and or even before that ChatGPT or Cursor, especially like when on the team at Webflow, we use Cursor to write custom code and, a little bit of JavaScript, whatever, especially like in addition or on top of Webflow sites. And only a year ago, it felt like, wow, this is useful, but like I definitely got to like watch what's happening and like be a little bit strategic about how I'm guiding it, and don't just, fully trust everything's okay that
Yep.
comes out, and I need to like thoroughly test and all that. Fast forward to today, I think that has definitely evolved quickly to like, it's just more capable or quicker or whatever. But I think the underlying thing of trust and not just assuming it will work is a healthy and evergreen thing to uphold, right? Like we should never just jump on it and be like, oh my gosh, it's just gold, like ship it, one shot, done. I'm not even going to test, and just know that it works. Like I think that's honestly no different than before AI 5+ years ago. And like I'm just going to download a template for a website and just like change the logo and some text and just publish and know that it's assumably good. I'm like, sorry, y'all. Again, from my way back days of like using templates, I got burned numerous times because the template creator didn't fully test or whatever. And so like I feel like that stuff still retains. I think where my, like, if I could like back up to the highest ceiling of where my excitement is starting to shift, and where I find myself thinking the most about is, instead of execution and, how can I like use this awesome component or this awesome JavaScript library or whatever, and like just, mentally thinking through how I'm going to bring something to life. My shift has become obsessed with workflows, which is like,
Mm.
you could think of it in, they are correlated, of course,
Yep.
but like at the highest level, I've had this feeling of, especially since like honestly, even over the holidays, I kind of, well, yeah, we had some time off work, and I was like, instead of, as sometimes happens in relaxing time, just doom scrolling and all that when I'm not playing with the kids and with the fam, I was like, I'm just gonna try to not touch social and just play with Claude Code specifically, and like see what I can build. Both from like a web app or whatever, but also just like on that idea of workflows, right? Like what if I could do anything, if I could just like paint a thing and say like, this is exactly how I want to manage sites. This is exactly how I want to build sites. There's no rules, no technical hurdles. What could I do? And it was super eye-opening for me in the way that it like helped me realize that I think for so long, we have always shaped our workflows and how we work as a team, how we work as individuals, how we, operate a site in a company, based on, first, what can this tool do? How do we handle permissions? How does it publish? How does it do version control? All that. We're gonna understand those requirements, and then we're gonna shape our workflow against our team and our whole structure and process and timelines, et cetera. But and so a lot of that was because of the requirement of like, well, we're picking a tool because we can't technically just make this up. Like we need to have this foundation and platform. And again, I think that still exists and is important today. But what has shifted now is like, as tools become more and more open and able to be customized and manipulated by, especially AI, so that somebody that's not as technical as a full-on engineer or whatever could now kind of actually customize it to the way they want to work, if anything was possible. That really has like changed my mindset on a lot of this, right? Like in the simplest ways, it comes to fruition in like, I I really don't want to do like landing pages anymore. Like I'm kind of tired of like, here's the copy doc, or, here's the design. Now go copy paste all the text and like drag your blocks in and like do it all manually. And like, yes, especially in Webflow, even for example, that is only getting faster because of, component first development and stuff like that. But it's still very manual. And yes, we also have MCP and stuff to help models do that. But like the general point is just that I want to do so much less of that. And so that I have more time to do the more exciting things or build more tools on top of our workflow to keep that exponential curve of capacity growing. You know what I mean? Like the irony is even to roll it back to like what we were talking about and Webflow community and origins is like back in 2019, no code conf, Webflow's first conference, right? The company, yes, the company, I was like, did we meet there? I'm assuming you were there. Like, I don't even remember.
I was
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I was 100% there.
You had to have been there. All I remember is like this is before Johnny and I met, and obviously, like you mentioned Johnny. For anybody watching, like Johnny, we work together at Brand at Webflow. We're at Anthropic together now. We're just like homies. And I remember I knew of Johnny from Twitter at that point. Like saw him there. I was like, but I can't introduce myself. Like I don't know. And then what's so funny is I begged the company I worked for at the time to just at least pay for my ticket. Like I'll pay for my flight, hotel, whatever. Just let me please go because I really think this will be valuable. And the way that they agreed to it was like, okay, fine, but you got to like take notes and present your findings when you come back. Like you need to bring value back to us, which is fair. And so I made this deck, which was actually just a Webflow site that I still have up to this day. And the main underlying point in all of it was that I had this little chart of like, timelines, like think like Asana timeline, like waterfall chart or whatever, where you have like, okay, we're going to like scope and then plan and then build and then, whatever. And the point I was making was like the traditional process can be really reduced dramatically once you use these like visual development tools like Webflow. And then what you're left with is like extra time to do the innovation.
Mhm.
And the irony is that like AI is just more of that, I guess, is my
Yep.
shape of it, right? And the point of workflows is I think how I'm making sense of it in my brain that will help us actually bring those to life. Like
Yep.
not just use AI for the sake of it, but use AI in a way that is actually saving us time and has an output that is actually production worthy, and safe and secure and collaborative and all that. So, anyways, I'll not ramble more than that. But workflows, that's where my head's at large. So yeah.
Awesome. No, I'm fully agree with you. And um, next week, well, one of the things that I'm starting to look at as well is like content workflows and content at
Mm,
scale.
for sure.
And
Hmm.
uh, the the idea I often go back to is this idea of like systems drive behavior, which creates value.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, obviously like design systems are really important. And you mentioned sort of like often we would fit what we do to how a tool works.
Yes.
And
Yes.
now what we're seeing is like, we're actually, yes, we started like coding with agentic tools a long time ago. We built Slater, back in 2023. Started looking at like how we could extend Webflow with JavaScript.
Totes,
But
totes.
now
Which,
what
by the
we're
way, my mug today
Oh,
is.
you got your Slater mug up. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the support. Um, but we're now looking at like how we can design with Claude, which has been really, really cool. And looking at HTML as a design artifact,
Mm, 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 mm,
where in some cases we're taking that design artifact and we're running agents to then build that in Webflow. Sometimes we're
mm,
copying and pasting that HTML into Figma and then kind
mhm,
of like getting that last mile in Figma.
mhm, mhm.
And I think it's just around like, as you said, like figuring out the way that we're going to break down. It's almost like working with AI tools. They say, you have to teach something, you have to learn something.
Totally.
And that when you're working with AI tools, what you're really doing is you're having to teach that thing how to be able to do that. But now almost you're having to break down what you know into a series of digestible steps.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so I think that's one of the big changes. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, I mean, we've got, I can see a couple people from Webflow that have tuned in, and we've actually had a couple other people that I saw that registered from Squarespace and, um,
Nice.
all sorts of different places.
Mhm,
And I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Let's start really broad. So AEO is like a really broad topic,
mhm,
and love. I mean, you're at the source, and so let's get into just some quick answers here. Uh, Talk with me about um, LLM.txt files. Is this cake or is this real?
I I last I've heard, because I will say I'm not an expert on this one, is
Sure.
that I've heard that it's still up for debate and
Sure.
potentially cake. The It's all a great theory and kind of went viral and is being adopted, but there is not mountains of evidence on its proven. But I think the foundation of the idea stands. Like, I
Yep.
think a simple reference is like the reason that skill files or plugins and all that are written in concise, specifically concise Markdown versus very verbose HTML is simply because it just uses less tokens and is more efficient for the model to understand, from my understanding, right?
Yep.
So same thing upholds, right? Like in the same realm, I've seen very mixed results in this. I'm very interested though to try, because I haven't seen like firsthand been able to test this yet. The whole like, detect a bot from your site and then serve them markdown that is more concise and than the full HTML, and see if it, leads to more results. But I've seen things from like AEOconf that Graphite and AirOps, I think, and Webflow did,
Yep.
where like Ethan from Graphite, just like a legend in the SEO space, it felt like he kind of was like, yeah, we don't have evidence that that's working yet. But then again, I've seen hype on Twitter of people like, it's everything tripled my traffic or
Oh my
whatever. I'm
gosh.
like, did it? Anyways, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, quick answers.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the evidence today, as you said, is inconclusive. I would also give a
Hmm.
shout out to Ethan over at Graphite. I've been
So good.
following him, and can you hear that? Can you hear that digging?
Just a little.
My,
It's all
my
good.
rabbit.
Just bring them on, you know?
Oh,
Oh my gosh, I'm seeing the
and I'm
chat
not
where
kidding.
people.
Like, here's
Oh,
here's Zeusy. So
yo, what's this one's
yeah.
name?
So Zeus is just kind of hanging out, but it's like their
Zeus.
playtime. So you see that fur just kind of like flying around.
Oh my
Uh,
and the red
yeah, but
eyes. Woof.
oh yeah, yeah, that's Zeus. You will look through your soul. Um,
I love that.
oh, we have Josephine here as well, and we were talking about workflows. Josephine is going to jump on with me next week,
Love it.
and we're going to look at content at scale and like how to actually view, not like a slop cannon, but how to be able to have like a wider we were talking about it yesterday. It's like the way that we've been working and updating within the web, it's been at like dial up speeds. It's like you sort of like do this thing, but it's like a Google document and a thing. And then it's like, and like how to be able to open up that aperture into something that's more like, not even a T1, but a fiber optic cable, like really being able
Totally.
to go wide.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that next week, but that gets into this idea again of like, how do you have systems that create the right behavior in the system? Is like, what's the tool chain that you're lining up? What's kind
Hmm.
of happening in that and how you're managing reviews? And then at the end of this, it's like, what's that look like on the web?
Mm.
Um, you had mentioned Markdown. I agree with you. I think it's one of these things where it's potentially really good, but
Hmm.
uh, the the internet hasn't caught up to it. I think like we look at um, something that's really interesting is getting into the agent analytics and being
Mm.
able to see what
Mm.
agents are doing on your site.
Mhm.
We've been
Mhm.
kind of building out some tooling there. I know that there are other companies that are doing that as well, and
Totes.
I think that's always great to be able to see what's kind of happening from training, like what
Mhm.
what part of your site is being used for training data versus what part of your site is being used for search results.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm curious just to be able to dig into sort of like a layer deeper. What are your thoughts on the MCP launch this week from Webflow?
Mm. I mean, I've been begging Webflow for slot support for a minute. So I'm very excited that that's here. I
Okay.
did see a little bit of a murmur yesterday that maybe component prop support's not fully there yet, but it's coming. It's all
Yep.
coming.
Yep.
So I think in general, I'm very excited. I think kind of like what the comment I made earlier of we're now. I mean, it's all been a race, but like
Mhm.
I feel like the pressure is building very quickly on platforms to open up and make more and more of those of the surfaces of their product accessible and functional to models. And so, this was just the next kind of pass that Webflow had there. Um, because to your point of even earlier, you made the comment on like y'all have been experimenting with like going HTML, like generating HTML and then bringing that into Webflow. Like again, that is great too. I think my dream workflow back to that point is just like I don't want to have to hop through tools constantly. Like ever since I even found Webflow, I remember making comments at the company I was at that I was like, especially once a site is set up and we're running it and we're growing it, I strongly feel there is less and less and less need for design tools. Like, why can't I just go right into Webflow and build the page? Yes, there might be some assets that are net new that we'll still have to go back to the design tool. But like even back then, again, whatever that was, 8 years ago or something, like
Yeah.
I still am like, I'm so sick of all these hoop jumping. Like, just let me work in one place is the dream workflow, right? So I think this is that same realm of just like the better the MCP gets in Webflow, the better that hopefully I can just directly work with a model to just do the first draft at least of pages and some of that. And especially I think MCP and Webflow has worked pretty well for the CMS in the past. Like that is the place I've used it the most is like setting up collections, but also like bulk updating collections. Like there was a project with localization, for example, and we were having some strain with like, a localization vendor and timing. And I ended up using Claude Code to translate all of these. There was like 420 some customer stories. So like long form rich text, all that. And it chewed through it in like 4 hours about. And so it was like, to be clear, not just raw, like I had a markdown file for the style guide, a CSV file for all the glossary translations. And so at least had some guidelines to your point of like, you have to be able to learn to then teach, right? Like that is the teaching layer. And the point is that it just, yeah, and I think it was something like 10 million characters or something that it processed in 4 hours. And again into Webflow. So like already the MCP is great there. Again, I think the one key I will say though is the reason I had to do it in Claude Code was so that Claude could do subagents. Like at one point there was
Mhm.
like 14 subagents doing that. And whereas like you just do Claude Chat, it's like I've found MCP is a lot harder to work with because it's like constantly
Yeah.
bouncing against little limits and all that. But again, that's where you have other options and just realize that is huge. And so now with this like growing layer of MCP and more designer API support for components and all that. Again, I think even the workflow y'all are doing with HTML is great because maybe that will just get compressed to you can just go straight into Webflow now. You don't have to have that intermediate, layer. So, anyways, yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's a question that I often hear out there on Twitter, and I've got a couple questions that have come up as well. If I was to back up just a minute,
Mhm.
you know, there is a question around like how well. I now there is no. I'm trying to scroll the questions, and then someone,
You're
and then
good.
I
You're
get.
good.
So so let's go here. I've seen a lot of posts on saying that AI is taking over design. Do you see this being the case?
Mm. I don't think so. I think it's just how you look at that. Maybe I love metaphors. I'm probably said that to you at some point in the past. I'm a big metaphor nerd of just trying to make sense of the world that way. And it's like the thing that just popped in my brain there is like that's like saying that, back when Photoshop came out, people that would edit photos by like trimming and cutting and layering and then rescanning and all that are just doomed. And it's like, no, they're just workflow evolved to maybe use Photoshop. Like
Yep.
and I think the same thing is happening here. And the part that I'm excited about is like there's things in design I'm so done doing. Like I'm so ready to be done doing. Like think about especially marketing sites and marketing sites that are also maybe for businesses, corporations scale, right? You usually have a big design system. I would love to not have to like do all the tedious work of like setting up every component and like making sure it has all the proper variants and modes and all that stuff. Like I can define the base and then let a model go execute the scale and then, take it that last mile, like you said earlier, with even the HTML and going back to Figma, right? Like that's the part that I think is rad. The other thing I think that is interesting to me about how design fits in all of this is back to the point of workflows. Once and even Webflow and MCP, and if I may, people that use frameworks in Webflow like Mast, that I
Mhm.
build and maintain. Mast uses like a row and column system that is not original. It is OG Bootstrap inspired. But the thing that I have started to dabble with and am curious about is to see, people often paint like AI that the models aren't creative.
Hmm.
And I think, yes, if you think about creativity in the sense of human, I get that. I empathize with that. But I think at the same time, there is an objective way to think about creativity as like you are just even in our brains, or maybe I don't know. This is the way I think about my own creativity is I have to have constraints. I really suck at the blank canvas thing. I need constraints, I need inspiration. And then all I'm doing is just finding patterns in those things and combining those into something that feels original. And in the same way, I've found that like when you give models some of these constraints, like with rows and columns to format layouts, like let it rip, see what it will do. I don't know. And it might feel like random and not creative, but like I think you can start to create patterns there. And so the thing that I am excited about is even back to the point of like not it taking the tedious work away and saving me time from layouts and all that is like I really want to get to this world where I'm like, hey, I got this brief and this doc for a new solution landing page for some industry. Hey, Claude, can you go build 3 versions of a page with this content? Make sure you use all of our brand voice and tone and the component system and all that. It outputs it into some surface that I can see all side by side, see what I like, mix and match. Let's be honest, especially agency life is like, if you think Frankensteins aren't real, you haven't had enough clients. It's the classic like pitch 3 ideas, it will always
Yep.
Frankenstein every
Yep.
time. And so it's the same thing with models in some way. I'm like, I think it's kind of cool to like let it make some interpretation of it. Some of it's going to be bad for sure,
Yep.
but some of it might be interesting and things you didn't think of that then starts to bleed into that territory of design that again, I think people can get defensive of. And I just don't think that that's a very like healthy way to think about it. Don't think about it replacing, think about it scaling and evolving your workflow and just helping you be maybe more creative in a lot of ways and a better designer because you can do more at once. I don't know.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about is, I think one of the big shifts or challenges is like we've been working in an information age as
Mm,
knowledge workers. And then there's a question of like, oh my gosh, now that we have these knowledge tools, where do we go?
mm.
And I'm sort of like I studied English and philosophy and a music nerd, and I go back to this song from Frank Zappa in Joe's Garage,
Mm.
which, rocker from the 70s,
Love it.
just a wild man. But he has this thing where it's in the middle of this rock opera, which he says, information is not knowledge, knowledge is not wisdom, wisdom is not truth, truth is not beauty, beauty is not love, love is not music, music is the best. But I was thinking
Mm.
about that in
Love
the
that.
terms of like this hierarchy of like we've been working in information age as knowledge workers, and now that we have these knowledge tools, what's next? And the way that I've been thinking about it is wisdom work, right? So not
Mm.
knowing how to
Mm.
do things, but knowing the
Love that.
wisdom of what to do and why to do something. And someone had
100%.
said here around like AI can't replace taste, which I think wisdom is sort of like, it is a way to think about taste.
Yes.
It comes from kind of like, yes, the experience and knowledge of how to be able to sort of like see the world and opportunities.
Mhm.
And what you're talking about is like, yeah, like, hey, let's go really wide here. Or, I mean, one of the reasons why we adopted Webflow way back in the day was I was like, oh my gosh, if I've got to spend my life making red lines on all the little ticky tacky like spacing. Do you remember this like
Yes.
way back in the day?
The sketch
And
and even before that, yes, for sure, for sure.
yeah, like my deliverable to development used to be a PDF that like
Mhm.
meticulous, and these were beautiful, and they just looked
Oh, yeah.
like, something that would come out of
And then
like,
when
I
tools like Zeppelin came out and you're like, "Whoa, I can like click a button and it just like"
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
And
totally.
it's like, no, now like we don't even have to think about red lines, right? And that was why I adopted Webflow. I was like, I'm just going to deliver the thing. It can't be that hard. You know.
100%. Yep.
And now, sure, building for the web, like designing the browser, can still have its challenges, but you
Mhm.
can paint with uh, a a bigger brush. Is probably the
Totally.
way to look at it.
Totally. I Dude, wisdom work is gonna stay with me. That is so good, and I think it goes way deeper and clearer to the point of, like, taste and craft is like the buzzwords right now in the last 6 months in the design community, and I'm like, they're so vague, to
Yep.
me that, like, the way I make sense of even the term wisdom is, like, it is knowledge from lived experience
Yep.
versus the contrast of, like, knowledge from books or,
Sure.
whatever. That's still valid knowledge, but it's not you didn't, like, cut your teeth, so to say,
Yeah.
to get that knowledge and that experience and understand that, and I think there's a lot of wisdom that is just so vital to our survival as humanity, but also how we make sense of the world and deal with hard situations. And like, yo, this is just another one of those awkward evolutionary type of situations, I think, for
Yeah.
society. And the more that you can instill your wisdom and experience in that, the more you realize how to just put it to work and not let it like get under your skin. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah.
That's so good. I love that expression.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I've been thinking, I was like, I really, because I've been viewing a lot of this stuff through that lens and then
Mm,
collecting examples of like, what are the practical ways that we can start to approach moving from knowledge work to wisdom work? So
mhm.
I'd love to run some stuff by you.
Yeah, of course. Let's go. Let's do it. Yeah.
All right, I've got another kind of hot topic question here, which is probably the
Yeah.
bigger question, which is, I mean, you work at Anthropic, like you're working with Claude all the time. Like, why
Mhm.
not just vibe code? You're like,
Mm,
why not vibe code Anthropic.com? Like, I can see from the outside, the Anthropic is on. I
mm.
looked on Built With, and you guys are using Webflow. Why not just be like, you know, just
Totes. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think the underlying thing is ironically even back to the point of wisdom is that at the end of the day there still needs to be this foundational layer that brings more than just designer developer people that are actually like, bringing the site to life and making sure it's okay and all that. There's all the other people and marketers and PMs and all that that still need to actively contribute, especially uh if you've seen the pace that Anthropic ships is, I don't know. It's the people ask like, "What's it like?" I'm like, "A freight train? I don't know."
yeah,
Like it's fast, not fast for the sake of it though. I think that's the hard part that is challenging to honestly describe. Is everything is still very intentional, just the essence of autonomy and divide and conquer kind of culture is the underlying catalyst. And
mm,
any CMS, Webflow, what have you, I think is still so valid here. Like what this topic makes me think of is if y'all saw the post when Cursor a couple months ago ditched, which was Sanity, the CMS they were using, and then just went all in on like Git and markdown files and all that. And like, first of all, I love and will always remember that situation because I thought all the parties, both like Lee Robinson and the Cursor team, were so professional and objective about it and not hypey. Like, yes, you could see that whole situation as like, they're trying to, grab attention, but I genuinely think it was like thought provoking intended. And then even Sanity's response to it was also so good. And I think that is the best expression I've seen of nailing the underlying question you're asking about like, what is the value of a CMS in this age of AI where I could just Claude, go write a blog post and throw it in GitHub and all that. And like, I still think it comes back ironically to the workflow thing. Like it comes back to like, or I see in the chat, Josh, like governance, right? Like you need to have this foundational layer where everybody can get in. You see what everybody's doing. You can collectively work on things in the same place, and then it's also like very efficient. I think so. This is the other thing because I have been getting more into code and pushing PRs and all that more than ever in my career. Like I've been in and out of GitHub for a long, long time, but to be honest, I have typically avoided it like the plague. That's why I liked tools like Webflow and all that early on when I found it. Is like I development and traditional engineering has so much stuff. Like it's just like I'm trying to think how to describe it. It's like you have to cross a river to push something live, but like a tool like Webflow is maybe to some it's like this is dangerous because you just have to like jump on a stone and go across and that's it. There's nothing like making sure you don't slip on the stone. Whereas like traditional engineering, honestly, at least in the past, felt like I was wading through mud. Like I have to do all these things. And like, to be
Yeah.
clear, a lot of those things are for good reason, for
Mhm.
security and safety and triple checking and all that. But like, it just felt like overkill. And
Yeah.
then Claude has helped a ton with that for me, just because like it, does a lot of it for me. But the underlying point is, to the point of the cursor story, is like, that's the part I'm like, y'all can how does that work? So every blog word change is a PR that somebody else has to approve, and you got to merge and you got to deploy and you got to let it wait for it to build. Like, I don't know. Maybe they are just such an engineering first culture that it's like, well, why wouldn't we do it that way? And again,
Sure.
I'm not trying to hate on it at all. Like, mad respect. And again, I think it's a really interesting approach because I've heard of people doing that same thing for personal sites for a long, long time.
Mhm.
Like, it's not like it's net original, but for a marketing site is the part that I was like, interesting. And then what's funny to wrap it out is, like I said, I think Sanity's response was so good. And then I have started like on the side playing more with other tools like Sanity, thanks to Claude Code, because again,
Yeah.
I'm not a React expert, have only dabbled around it for a long time, never like hard directly written a ton of it. And my eyes have really started to get open up around that point of like, wow, again, a CMS is still so valuable, but it's not valuable on the surface of like what it used to be. I think it's
Mhm.
valuable on the speed and safety more than anything and ever before. And what differentiates it and makes it even more valuable, or helps its value continue to be not just relevant but scale, is the flexibility, is the
Yeah.
customizability. Like, and having it aligned to whatever you need to do for a specific client or for your team, right? So anyways, it is an interesting topic.
Yeah.
um
Well, and
we'll
just
see, we'll
there
see
was a
how it
couple
evolves.
people,
Yeah,
from Sanity had signed up for this, so
love it, love it.
you'll probably get a mug in the mail or something. And yeah, I think I saw a post from you've brought up kind of like the governance, and we've talked about that a good bit. And
Hmm.
I would agree that, yeah, for the Cursor team, and obviously they are like very engineering heavy. And I think we're in a great time where we've been talking about like democratizing the web for a while, and now
Oh,
it's really starting to happen. And I think there's a
totally.
lot of different ways to be able to do that.
Hmm.
There was a post this week from Rachel, who's CPO at Webflow, and she was talking about sort
Hmm.
of the future, and kind of got me thinking about what you're talking about for this sort of governance layer. And she was talking about a marketing harness. And so I'm
Mm.
curious, from your perspective,
Yeah.
how do you think about the value of a marketing harness versus the one thing that she didn't talk about, which I think would be my yes and,
Mm.
is what about primitives and extensions? Because she talks
Mm.
about collaboration and control and like all these types of things. But I thought the thing that was missing was primitives and extensions. So how do you kind of balance? But because you're mentioning like, and I've seen this as well. I've seen a lot of people, not a lot, but I would say a substantial amount of people that are becoming CMS curious. And
Mm.
starting to look at some of like looking at Sanity, and I've
Right, right, right.
seen people doing kind of vibe coding with different things.
Mm.
Um,
I
and yeah,
Oh,
like what
nice.
how do
Blog
you think
post.
about like that spectrum of primitives versus harness, and
Yes, yes.
what does that mean for, an enterprise?
Yeah, so good. I think so. I saw Rachel's post. I did not know there was a corresponding blog post, so thank you
Yeah.
for somebody posting that in the chat. And so I guess my understanding of what she was referring to in the term harness, but correct me if this is off and not her intention. Only a couple months ago, again, as I was dabbling with Claude Code and then even messing with like, well, how do I, do my own little like Claude type of thing where I'm using the API and then I can fully control what that chat experience is like. And that's what I learned about this idea of a harness. And I've seen people post about it in that, like, the expression I've seen posted on Twitter a few times was like, the magic behind Claude Code or Codex or anything is not, it's still the same model you're using in chat. It is the harness. It is this like loop layer that is
Yep.
helping it interpret what it needs to do, where it needs to go, what tools it needs to bring in at what time, all of that. So to be clear, not an expert on harnesses, but I got that base level understanding, and I'm like, oh wow, that's super interesting. And helps me make sense of that. And then in the context of marketing harness, I guess where my brain goes with that is that loop layer. If you think about it in the context of something like Claude Code, but for marketing, it's like it also now needs to bring in the extensibility, to your point, of primitives of even like, all right, anytime it's going to write words, make sure that you're referencing brand voice and tone. Anytime you're going to, create a layout of some kind, make sure you're referencing our component or design system. And then I think the broader thing that's really compelling, is what earlier you were talking about scale, and I like that you use the term aperture, like a camera, of like, how do we actually like open it up and like really scale content.
Mm.
And a thought that for me has come to mind recently in this general realm is that anytime we make new pages on sites, we're always like, thinking about all these different assets or all these different surfaces, maybe is a better way to express it, of like, how are these other pages performing? From an SEO perspective, what other cross-linking should we do? What kind of content, should we focus on around specific audiences here? And usually that's a few people involved in trying to like just brain force that together. And they're going off their lived experience of the product or the marketing surface or the brand. But that is inherently limited. And I think it's maybe a powerful way where AI becomes really, really valuable, because you know what AI is really good at is taking like absurd amounts of data and processing it in the blink of an eye
Yeah.
and finding those patterns and relationships. So if you back up and think about that, especially at like a big marketing site scale, we're like, hey, I need a new solution page. Here's the high level content. Again, do some versions for me. And when it's doing that, it's not just, writing some content and it's very generic and all that, but if you at least maybe set up a harness right, then it could also go scrape or understand your entire site, just in the same way that you like open up Claude Code and you're like, hey, take a look around the code base before we do anything. And it can go through literally tens of millions of lines of code, maybe
Yeah.
not in seconds, but like
Sure.
you get the point, right?
Yeah.
It can go through it really quick and find relationships really, really quick that we just cannot do as humans. And so if you think about that in marketing, what if it's doing the same thing? So it's going to get not just what blog posts are great to link in this new solutions page, but also what if it's looking at all your analytics at the same time and like knowing what's performing best, what's trending, what keywords are tied to it, and then forming all of those relationships together as this foundational surface or the cake that is on the foundation of the frosting, and the frosting being your brand voice tone,
Yeah.
your brand expression, your design system, and all that, the things that we see and experience as humans. But the underlying relationship of pages and content and data is like massive potential to really instill AI in from like
Yeah.
a harness perspective, so that anytime you're doing something, it's always considering that. Like, even to back up on like what I just mentioned, the little like Claude plugin and stuff that I've been tinkering with on the side has just really got my brain going in the same realm. And even back at Webflow too, when like AI Site Builder was happening and some of that, like it all comes back to the thing I've just always felt is like, we just need ways to instill that guidance. Again, paste in all your brand voice tone or whatever it is, but we need to be able to layer that. And I think like the irony is so much of that expression is like skills with Claude, right? And the parody I've made is like, it's not all that different than another reason I've always loved Webflow is that we call a div a div. We call slots because slots is a concept and divs are a concept from other places. Those are not proprietary invented things. We were just making them visual and easier to use. And so it's the same thing if you think about it with like, what is really catalyzing people scaling and using AI in production use cases? It is, skills, markdown files, some of those things. So like, how do we bring those same primitives into this idea of a harness, right? That
Yeah.
like loops through and make sure that everything you implement is arguably, objectively has a lot more potential to be more valuable for SEO growth, all that, than if we were to do it just from our own brain power and clicking around. And so like it
Yep.
almost shifts that narrative between like the assumption that all AI is slop. And I'm like, dude, slop in, slop out. Like I just wrote a blog post. I finally started blogging after wanting to for years. And I did one the other day based on a tweet. Somebody said that like, breaking news, slop existed before AI. And I'm like, yes, like this is what I'm saying, y'all. Like you all just paint AI with these freaking stereotypes. And believe me, I also did at one time, but like the more I use it, the more I gain wisdom because of lived experience actually using it, not just believing what people say on the internet. The more I realize, oh my gosh, as long as I feed it the right thing, I give it the right playground, I give it the right environment, this can save me so much time and arguably have better output than I could ever do. But it's not for free. It's not for just like click a button and it's done. You know what I mean? Like that is the human part, the wisdom work that will always be there, in my opinion. Like, anyways,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Well, I think you're hitting on. I had this like what I can only describe as an iPhone moment last week, and this is why I was like, Josephine. It's like you've got to show the world this, and so Josephine's going to come on next week and show how she's been working in AirOps. We're starting to
Yeah.
get into AirOps, and we've been doing a lot of work as well in Profound.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she showed me this workflow where, it's like everyone's talking about like, oh, you need to make FAQs and listicles and like all this, but it's like, who's going to go in and update 700 pages or like go and look at every single blog post or whatever?
Totes.
And, or like, how long will it take for like this recording to then become like, a LinkedIn wrap up and like, all this stuff. And she was like, oh, well, here I go. And I'm like, she was like tapping into like all these other third party sources and then listening to like what are real customer questions that are happening on sales calls and getting like, ideas of pages that needed to be able to have like additional references. Like, and it was like
Totally.
this amazing, to your point, like workflow and
Mhm.
then really opening up the aperture and
Mhm.
then constantly having that site be sort of more of a living artifact of the brand as opposed to what the website has often been viewed as a static brochure where you
Right.
like set it and forget it. And as much as we
Totally.
like to say like test and iterate, I mean a lot of times like the testing and iteration might happen on one page as opposed to that long tail, which actually is what really starts to like drive specific questions for people that have jobs to be done.
Mhm.
So yeah, but next week, hey Skylar, what's up? I've seen all sorts of people and know in the chat here. But I will go and get this up on Luma, and again, we're going to do sort of like a deep dive with her around like, okay, here's like strategically how she's been setting stuff up, and then second part of this is like, here's what it looks like, nuts and bolts. Um,
Love that.
what did she
Love
say?
that.
This chat.
I'm just gonna say I briefly played with AirOps back when I was at Webflow.
Yep.
Vivian, our SEO lead, who shout out Vivian, she's such a legend. Yeah, when they were first starting to bring that on, I mentioned it and she's like, "Oh yeah, jump in." And like I remember I threw no code supply co in just like as like a, the onboarding part or whatever is like, "What's your site?" And I was blown away by how thorough it was with scraping your site, consuming it, making sense of the brand, all that, and then the most impressive part was like it's still for me the one of the top tools that I think of when anybody brings up human in the loop. In
Yep.
that, like, I don't know if it's still this way, to be honest. I haven't been in it in a minute, but like at least then, to your point of content refreshes or generating content, it was like this multi-phase, like Kanban board type thing where like it would go do something against your standards, right? And then bring you back a
Yep.
draft. You have to review it before you can go to the next step. And I often think of that in the same realm of like, again, oh man, wisdom work is just that's the title. Is like is back to that. That is still so valuable and our place of just being in the loop and guiding it and making sure the output is good. And then once you start to grow that trust and foundation, it's like sweet. Now start to
Yep.
slowly loosen the reins and let it really start to scale. Anyways, yeah, super
Yeah.
awesome. I will make sure to tune into this one with
Oh, it's
Josephine.
it's like as I said, and I'm not just trying to step,
Yeah, yeah,
like we've got a really great conversation here, and we'll get a couple questions in, but
yeah.
I think it's starting to change how we view the web and
Mhm.
like what
Mm.
will, because a lot of people have said like, oh, it's like that scene in Portlandia, the web is over, the web is over, websites are going away. And I'm like, I could see web pages going away or the idea of a page because that was really sort of a document reference. And I could see us
Sure.
moving into more of like a just in time model, or
Mhm.
we've been thinking about designing for conversation. And I think that really gets into this notion of
Totes.
answer engine optimization or being answer ready or winning the answer. Like those are the things. But I think the
Yep.
one thing that AEO misses on is this idea that a brand is going to be the answer. And as a
Mm.
brand, you really want to be part of the conversation. You don't want to be the period at the end of the sentence. You want to be sort of a participant in a longer narrative. And so
Right.
I think that's sort of this interesting shift that we'll start to see. But let's dig in. We've got a couple questions. I'm going to go back
Yeah.
into the chat. This has been a really incredible conversation, um, and we'll get just some 2-minute answers here, so we can get in as many. So, first one here: what's the future of a Webflow developer? Are they strictly developing in Webflow from Figma, or like how do you think about this? How would you describe what your job will look like or what this job will look like, let's say over the next like 6 to 24 months? We won't try to go too much further than that.
Yeah. I think back to some of our points earlier, I think what could start happening is just that middle Figma layer is in that question is the handoff.
Mhm.
And I think we could be moving to a world where that handoff is what is one of the earlier parts that changes. I think usually what comes before Figma designs, especially if somebody's doing it that in that workflow, is content. And we understand the world and communicate with each other through words. So I don't see that going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so my opinion is like I could see people doing that have to start adopting a workflow that's more client or whoever is like, here's our kind of final content. Like here's all the words we need to say on the homepage and on the about page and on whatever. Can you start bringing this to life? And maybe you just go straight into Webflow again and mock things in there and prototype things there. And you need to become less and less reliant on this like map of the design, if you will, in Figma. And again, to be clear, that doesn't mean that like Figma is irrelevant. I think
Yeah.
Figma is still very much, especially for a net new site, is still so nice to go in and explore ideas. And like even to back it up on the like when I don't freelance on the side anymore, but like when I still was, the workflow I came to love for any net new site was like I would mock the homepage, some high level design system primitives, and then maybe like wire up a couple other important pages. But beyond that, I'd be like, here's the direction. Everything else I will get going in Webflow and then we'll just build the rest there. I'm not going to spend my time mocking up every single
Yep.
stinking page. That is just a waste of time. And I think that's just going to become more and more relevant, especially in the world where like ideally the models can do more in Webflow and through MCP or whatever. And so they can help you, reduce that middle layer much quicker. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that um the artifacts become more ephemeral, right? Just as
totally.
you wouldn't think twice about going and creating, a and even like the idea of a design direction on a website could become seasonal, right? Think about how many
Yeah,
times
sure.
a store
Mhm.
updates. Like I go into Anthropology and I don't even recognize it. Half the time I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm
Fair.
sitting there, I'm
Yeah,
sitting there
yeah,
in
yeah.
like the dude chair, like waiting for my wife to do stuff or whatever. But I'm
Yes.
like, oh, it's Christmas themed. It's like, now summer, like all these types. And I think that type of
So good.
flexibility becomes really interesting where,
Yes.
you can
Mhm.
have your almost entire like 700 page, 1,000 page site being as ephemeral as you would roll out a brand campaign, but then
Totally.
that
Because
same type of like, and not have to have like we've all been through kind of like the site refresh and you're finishing, you're just like, no more.
yeah,
Uh,
totally. I mean, I couldn't agree more because the irony is even Webflow and webflow.com, we often joked that like we are a website builder and we should be updating even our homepage more often, but it was like, oh, every couple of years or something like, what are we
yeah,
doing? And
yeah,
like, again, some of it was just simply time. and it would take too long, be too many involved. But as that gets reduced, because we can ask a model to go do something, or we have less stress about building everything perfectly in this global harmony, maybe that matters less now, because you can ask a model to just go do and check everything at scale, and that becomes your avenue to global updates. At least 80% of the time, you still need some system. So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah,
I think I love the store analogy, because like, they do that for a reason, because it works, because it
exactly.
keeps people coming back, it keeps people converting. So like, why not do that on websites? So I love that.
Yeah, and being able to learn, right? And
Oh,
have that
totally. See how
flexibility
it
to
affects.
learn and yeah.
Mhm.
And so, well, I guess we're kind of coming up on time. I'd love to just hear, for everyone that's out there, first, thank you for joining in the conversation. Great
Yeah.
to see, old friends in the chat. And if we haven't met yet, I look forward to meeting you on LinkedIn, or sometimes I'm on Twitter still. Um, and again, next week, we're going to be jumping into content at scale. Again, getting into more of these workflows and how to be able to open up the aperture, open up our bandwidth to really doing more. Uh, but Corey, what's kind of like, maybe a final thought of where people can maybe take away a nugget for what they're going to be doing over the next, let's say 6 months.
Mm. I mean, uh my own from drawing from my own experience of that's helped me make sense, or be excited about what's coming, or how things will evolve, is again doing. Like, I can't, I know it seems obvious, but I was the same as I speculate many others are, where you're just spending way more time on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, seeing all the hype and the posts about what people are making. And if I see another stinking like dither generator thing, I'm gonna literally lose it. Because I'm like, I think the unlock for me was like, just start doing it. I get that like some of these tools cost money, or you stress about amount of tokens or whatever, but like, let's be real. How much have we spent on fonts or templates or other things in the past to test that you didn't end up using? And I think like, if you really get in and just start playing with these things and understand how they work and where they fit or don't fit in your workflow, I think that is one of the best things you can possibly do to instill what is coming, or what the future of our role will look like, and how it also corresponds to everybody on the team. And then just like beyond that, be open. Like, try, like we have this expression even on the team at Anthropic, of like, just try to like forget everything you've ever learned, and come to every project and discussion with a fresh set of eyes and perspective and openness, in a way that like
Right.
will help us evolve what this looks like going forward. And I think that general essence is so critical right now. Like, if you are beholden to only doing things in one way in the past, like I saw just earlier this morning, a prominent designer I will not name say that like they can never imagine designing not in a canvas. And I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, I bet, people that rode horses back before cars were invented too, like when cars came out, they're like, wow, I will never ever ride an unreliable bag of metal with explosions in a box in front of me to go somewhere. That is nuts. And it's like, yeah, but then all of a sudden the world goes by, and horses still exist, people still have them, you have to have an absurd amount of money to have them. But like, now the mainstream and the no-brainer is a car. And so I think it's so relevant here as well, that just be open to it, y'all. Like, this is, I think, a really, really exciting time. I get fully that it can be scary and uncertain, but I think for me, again, speaking from my own lived experiences, the more I use it, the more I play with it, even if it's for just an experiment, the more I get excited about the possibilities, and my brain starts to change and mold around like, okay, how can I actually put this to work now? How can this save me time? All that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to see, yeah, what happens. I think this will be a interesting year for
Yeah.
sure, but like, we say that every year, you know what I mean? And
Sure.
who knows what's going to happen. So like, I'm just grateful so much for the broader community, Webflow community, but like, honestly, even beyond, I feel like all that's the other thing, is all of
Yeah.
this feels like it's just kind of like melding all of us together. Especially think about even just designers and
Right.
developers alone. It always kind of felt like, we're this like we have to work together, but like
Yep.
we're throwing information over walls and all that. But this is all just like exploding the wall and leveling the playing field in some ways that like again can create uncertainty and chaos and fear, but I think at the optimistic side of it can create amazing things, and really bring all of us together. And doing that I think is just like so exciting to me, and like really my focus most days. So yeah,
Amazing.
thank you again for having me, man.
There's a couple points I just wanted to recap with, and
Yeah.
then we'll close out here, which is your advice for navigating these feelings of boom and doom is to jump in and
Mm.
build and to jump in and just do, right?
Yes.
And
Make
then
Yeah, make sense of it yourself because
yeah,
you tried and used it. Like, yeah.
yeah. And I think it's easy or maybe it's tempting to sit
Mhm.
back and feel overwhelmed with that sort of like that range of emotion of between oh my gosh this is so amazing and then like this is everything is horrible, right? So that boom
Totally.
and doom.
Mhm.
And within that be able to take like the beginner's mind. Like I love like we were talking about like the most transformational technology in
100%.
human history, and yet like what you're talking about is a 2,000-year-old philosophy of starting every day new, right?
100%.
The beginner's
100%.
mind.
Yes.
um
Love that.
and within that, it's almost sort of like a breakdown of the notion of self. Like a lot of times we put labels on ourselves of like,
Oh,
I'm a designer, I'm a writer, I'm a developer, and
mhm.
getting to something more foundation, which is I'm a builder and I do
Yes.
things. And I
Yes.
think like the notion of building is where we can play and have fun and
Yep.
really be able to have a sense of expression and what it means to be a human. And
Totally.
so I just yeah, I love all of that, and again, I can't thank you enough for joining today and, like, being able to talk this through. This is just just incredible.
So good. I love Josephine's comment in the chat. Classic Mason dropping the full dissolution of self into the B2B SaaS AI call. Yes. This is
Yeah,
what I'm
well,
hearing is like,
I
I couldn't agree more, yo. If we're spending most of our time doing this, let's be real about it and like bring
yeah,
it back to who we are and how we create and all that. So thank you. So good. Awesome.
amazing. Awesome, alright, I'm gonna stop the stream now, and hopefully, so Corey, just hang out for just 1 second so that it can continue to upload,
Yes.
and thank you so much, everyone. Awesome to see, everyone in the chat, and I hope to see everyone next week, if not, on the internet.
Love it.
Peace.
Thanks, y'all.